All right, so there was a great story yesterday that would illustrate how power pathologizes people, how people with money and power define somebody and make them mentally ill and ruin their reputation and do these sorts of things to them. This story is about the former Knick basketball player Charles Oakley as he was thrown out of Madison Square Garden. So back in my heyday, this was when Michael Jordan was the dominant basketball player. And he played against the New York Knicks, and his former teammate Charles Oakley was a iconic New York Knick. He was what was known back then as an enforcer, a big guy who was aggressive, kind of a thug. He was like a thug, but well respected with other players and well loved by the New York Knicks fans. He ended up retiring, and the New York Knicks were purchased by this guy, James Dolan, who is one of the worst sports owners in the world. And Charles Oakley has been very critical of James Dolan, and there's a lot of hostility between them. And Charles Oakley was not welcome in Madison Square Garden for a New York Knicks game. He was sitting a few seats behind James Dolan, and he had been there 4 minutes, and security came up and started to harass him and tell him he had to leave, and things got physical, and about 10 guys threw him to the ground and arrested him and escorted him out. So it's this big controversial event that happened. So here's the part that I'm talking about, this condescending attitude that people in power take towards people that they have power over. So the Knicks issued a formal statement, and they said, Charles Oakley came to the game tonight and behaved in a highly inappropriate and completely abusive manner. He has been ejected and is currently being arrested by the New York City Police Department. He was a great Knick, and we hope he gets some help soon. So this line, we hope he gets some help soon, this is this condescending line. I've talked about this before in other videos. Oh, we're just trying to keep you safe. There is a lot packed in that short sentence. Oh, this person's mentally incompetent. They're crazy. He's an alcoholic. He's now been banned from the New York Knicks arena. And so this is what you have here. These two guys have a dispute. A kind of belligerent, aggressive player and a really horrible human being, billionaire basketball team owner. And in this case, the owner has a lot more power. So the guy shows up. He doesn't want him in his stadium. He doesn't want this guy in his stadium. They said that he was saying things or he was acting abusively, and that's possible. But the way that they threw him out of the game, and now they've banned him from the arena. Now this guy, James Dolan, gets to use the police. So there's two people involved in this organization. He's a former Knick, and he's a part of the New York Knicks family. They're talking about Charles Oakley. But James Dolan gets to use the police. They have him arrested, and they use that in the line. He's going to be arrested now. Like that is some admission that's some condemnation that he's the one at fault. Because this guy, this billionaire guy, basically has his own private police force. He has his security thugs that provoked a physical confrontation. They came up, they put their hands on the guy. They were going to move him physically out of the arena. And so they get to do that. And Charles Oakley doesn't have those options, even though he's a wealthy man himself compared to most people. So this is where you can see people with power and privilege. I've talked about this before. They have code words, and they get to define somebody else that has a dispute with them as being mentally ill or violent or abusive or having criminal behavior. They get to use the police, and then they get to slam them in the media and the press and define the event. I wanted to point this out because I've covered this in other videos. There's a movie coming out. I've seen the trailer. I'm not going to see it. Maybe I'll rent it later on, called The Cure for Wellness. And they talk to people this way, in this very condescending way. Oh, you're not yourself. I talked about gaslighting and these types of things in other videos. So this is something I think people should be aware of. In the future, when there's disputes between corporations and citizens, we've seen this already with the bankers using public police forces to evict people. and they get to define when there's a dispute and they do something that's completely wrong, completely unfair. The people don't have the money and the ability to go to the court systems. The court systems are in favor of the corporations and the billionaires and the trillionaires. And so they provoke these people into acting in a way that's, they fall apart. They have some sort of mental breakdown. They get really angry, and then they get arrested and diagnosed with these types of things. You're going to see this more and more, where people are pushed into a corner, and then they get thrown in FEMA camps or whatever happens here. This is a martial law type situation where there's fascism, where the corporations and the military are merged together. All right, so this is Paul Romano reporting from the apocalypse. Everybody have a wonderful night.